Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us in person for the Public Information Center number 1 for the Transportation Master Plan. We called it the Mobility for All. My name is Eric Chan. I'm the Senior Manager of Transportation, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all for tonight. Even though there's a Rattlers game and a Leafs game, you all show up to tonight, so really appreciate that. And also for the continuous support, that some of you may have already been involved already in the Transportation Master Plan, and later on we will also explain the journey of the Master Plan going forward. At this time, I would like to introduce our city's project team. Today we have Samson Watt, the Manager of Transportation Policy and Strategy. Right now he is manning the boards outside, welcoming staff. We also have Laura Chung, our Project Manager for the Transportation Master Plan, right over here. We also have our consultant team, HDR Consulting Company, starting with Jonathan Chai. We have Justin Jones, and we have Alfred Chan, also together with us. And before we begin, I want to note that today's presentation will be recorded. For those who cannot make it for tonight, they can also have the opportunity to know about this project, this Transportation Master Plan. We will also put information on the slide that you're showing on the project website. So those who want to take records on anything, you don't have to copy all the slides, all the things, all the information will be available on the website. Earlier this year, the project team held a number of pop-up events at the community centers, at Markfield Mall, to seek community input on their mobility experience and expectations. The expectations could be what they are experiencing nowadays, in the past, but more importantly, in the future. And this is the whole core essence of this Transportation Master Plan. It's more forward-looking, at the same time addressing what we have today. Tonight is the second public touch point, even though we call it the public information number 1, but it is our ongoing effort in our journey to continue that dialogue, to let us know your feedback, your expectations, and your participation is very, very critical to the success of this master plan, because it is a plan for you all. The work we are doing today together is more than just infrastructure. Even though we know that the roads, the transit, those are the things, the physical things that we need to facilitate the movement of people and goods. But it's more than that. It's about imagining the kind of city we want Markham to be now and in the next future by policies, by plans, by strategies. And this, in essence, what the Transportation Master Plan is about. Next. So we have an agenda, full agenda ahead of us. First, we'll start off with a short presentation of the consultant team, starting with Jonathan. Will guide you through the journey, the specific elements within the Transportation Master Plan. And then later on, there will be, and part of that will also include micro-mobility, and we will explain what that means. And over there, some of those who arrived early may see some of the boards outside that talks about the micro-mobility. And the second aspect, second important elements that we want to talk about is the network alternatives. What different networks can facilitate type of movement in where. It's very geographic. You see a lot of maps, and within those there are different scenarios. And the presentation will talk more about that. And lastly, obviously, we're not end. This meeting is just the beginning. We will have multiple next steps and how do we go towards the completion of this project. Next. But before we do that, I want to, the most important is to do the land acknowledgement. So we acknowledge the traditional territories of indigenous people and their commitment to stewardship of the land. We acknowledge the communities in Circle, the north, west, south, and eastern directions, and Haudenosaunee and Huron-Wendat and Anishinaabe, Seneca, Chinwabe, and the Mississauga of the Credit peoples. We share the responsibility with the caretakers of this land to ensure that the dish is never empty and to restore relationships that are based on peace, friendship, and trust. We are committed to reconciliation, partnership, and enhanced understanding. One thing though I want to note that, as I mentioned before, today the information will be collected in accordance with the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, with the exception of the personal information. All comments will become part of the public record. And with that, I'm going to pass on to Mr. Jonathan Chai to guide us through the presentation of tonight.
Thank you, Eric, and good evening, everyone. Really, thank you for taking the time to be with us tonight to provide your input to the Markham Transportation Master Plan. So I'll start with by explaining just what is a transportation master plan. So the Markham Transportation Master Plan, or TMP for short, which you'll hear us refer to as the acronym, it sets a long-term vision for Markham's evolving transportation needs, looking ahead to the future, and it will align with provincial and regional legislation and policies. It'll help plan for future needs, supporting all transportation modes for the next 30 years and beyond. It'll support new development and population growth in the city of Markham, and also integrate with emerging transportation technologies and help respond to new mobility trends. The TMP provides a framework for the city to implement progressive transportation policies to enhance mobility options for all modes. Next slide. So the TMP is not starting from scratch. We're building the plan upon a strong foundation, starting with provincial plans and policies through, firstly, the Greater Golden Horseshoe Transportation Plan and the Growth Plan for Ontario. York Region's own Transportation Master Plan study and official plan, as well as the city's own projects and initiatives. And this includes the official plan review, which is going to be undertaken in parallel to this study, as well as area-specific secondary plans, the Vision Zero Road Safety Plan, citywide parking strategy, and school zone safety guide, just to name a few. Next slide. So in terms of where we're at in this study, as Eric had mentioned, while this is our first official public meeting, this is actually our second round of public engagement. As you see on the chart there, we did hold community pop-up events to gather your feedback earlier on in the study, where we were out at community centers as well as Markville Mall to hear your thoughts on how transportation in Markham can improve in the future and what are your challenges today. So we've now taken your feedback and presenting to you today on ideas for potential improvements and potential alternative solutions. And then after we hear from you today, we'll be updating our plans to identify a preferred solution, which we'll present to you at a second public meeting, and this will be held in early 2026.
Can you speak a little louder, please, or stand closer to the mic?
Okay. So in terms of what we heard to date, the slide there highlights who we've engaged with so far, and that includes staff from City of Markham in terms of different departments, other governments and agencies as well, community groups, youth groups, representatives from micromobility vendors, as well as we held one-on-one meetings with council in terms of regional and ward councillors. We also consulted with 9 different First Nations groups, and we received over 200 responses from the pop-up sessions that I mentioned, and also over 300 responses in total through different surveys that we've undertaken throughout the study. So in terms of what we heard, some of the top challenges are shown on the screen there, and that includes traffic congestion, limited transit services, long transit travel times as well, a lack of transportation options, safety concerns, and that bicycle facilities don't feel comfortable. And we also got some ideas about how to improve the transportation network, and that starts with all-day, more frequent transit service, having more rapid transit options in the city, and connecting to and from the city of Markham, improved traffic management and congestion reduction, improved pedestrian infrastructure, and finally enhanced road safety measures. So we took your input and developed a transportation vision for Markham. And I'll read it up here. So the City of Markham envisions a bold, innovative mobility system that supports complete connected communities where people of all ages, abilities, and incomes can safely, conveniently, and sustainably access everything they need for a high quality of life. And a core objective of this vision of mobility for all is to consider transportation equity in our planning and analysis. Transportation equity strives to provide everyone with access to the same opportunities and services by providing transportation solutions that better address the needs and barriers of historically and continually marginalized groups. Okay, and with that, I'm going to pass the presentation over to my colleague Justin.
All right, thank you so much, Jonathan. So I'm going to speak a little bit about the micromobility strategy. And the reason why we're dedicating so much time and space to this is micromobility is one of those emerging policy directions that is new within the transportation space. And so as we are developing the Transportation for All, the Mobility for All Markham's Transportation Master Plan, we are really focusing on how policy and infrastructure can best support this emerging technology for mobility. So let's move on to the next slide here. So first and foremost, it's important that we all be speaking the same language when we're talking about micromobility. So micromobility in terms of when we are using this term is an term that kind of covers several different types of vehicles. For our study, we are looking at traditional bicycles, which we're all familiar with, as well as electric assist bicycles or e-bikes, which will have an electric motor to assist the rider while they pedal, but also electric kick-style scooters or e-scooters. So those are two-wheeled devices that are powered by an electric motor when the rider is standing. Micromobility does not include things like motorcycles or mopeds, and any other low-speed electric vehicles that are considered for mobility aids or accessibility devices. Those are not regulated under micromobility. Next slide, please. So the reason why we're looking at micromobility is that part of one of the reason why we are undertaking this transportation master plan is to address first and last kilometer connectivity, to provide the residents of Markham with more options for how to get to different places within their community. And micromobility is a proven solution to address transportation issues, including congestion, by offering mobility options and first and last kilometer connectivity. So if you wanted to get from your home to the mall, there might be a bus that takes you directly to the mall, but that doesn't really work super well if the closest bus stop to your home is still a 15-minute walk away. Well, micromobility takes that time that it would take you to walk to that bus stop and shrinks it. It makes it essentially kind of a 4 or 5 minute ride on a micromobility device. And so when you end up at that bus stop, now you have that last kilometer problem solved. You're able to engage in that trip through a number of different modes, a number of different tools that are available within your toolbox to get to the different spots within your community. And that's what micromobility really does well. And when we look across North America, what we see is that the average trip length by a micromobility device is 2.4 kilometers, or about 15 minutes. It really is being taken mostly to get people to and from either transit or to get to their final destination once they've gotten off at a transit station within the area that they are going to. So it could be an alternative for part of a trip, or it could replace an entire shorter trip. Next slide, please. So one of the key things that is important to note is that micromobility was the fastest recovering mode of transportation during the COVID-19 pandemic. Micromobility recovered ridership faster than any other mode of transportation and has grown faster than any other mode of transportation across Canada. So when we are talking about micromobility in the context of Markham, we are not talking about reinventing the wheel. We are not talking about setting a new trend. We are talking about joining a trend of mobility options that is growing across this country. And it is growing in different municipalities as well. We're not just seeing it grow in the large urban centers. We are seeing significant growth in ridership in places like Quebec City, for example, where their all-electric bike share has been growing by leaps and bounds. So what we are seeing is that micromobility is a new trip option that can help to encourage more people to try traveling in different ways and getting to places such as shopping, appointments, or going to community centers. And certainly what we're seeing is that the majority of these uses are being done for commuting hours. So really alleviating some of that peak hour congestion that we are all starting to see throughout our community. Next slide, please. But in order for people to feel safe and comfortable riding micromobility devices, we need to have infrastructure that makes them feel safe and comfortable. And so there are a variety of different facility types that can accommodate active transportation and micromobility. So I'm just going to walk through those really quickly here from top to bottom. So shared roadways are generally mixed traffic on public roadways where cyclists or micromobility users are sharing that roadway with other vehicles. Bike lanes are a portion of the roadway that are designated for use by either micromobility or cyclists, typically by basically just paint, markings, painting, and signage. Cycle tracks are physically separated bike lanes, so they can be separated within the roadway, so actually on the road surface, separated by physical barriers, whether that is kind of precast curbs or any other kind of physical separation. Oftentimes what you will see now is emerging is more of the curb separated cycle tracks where the bike lane is above the curb off the roadway and at the same level as the sidewalk. Multi-use paths are paths that are also within the road right of way. So these are the ones that you will typically see on some of the regional roads here in Markham. Places like Major Mackenzie Road, where you would see the multi-use path on one side of the roadway. These are typically separated from the roadway and are usable by cyclists, micromobility users, and pedestrians. And then multi-use trails, and this is where things kind of get interesting, is that when I'm talking about multi-use paths, I'm talking about things that are essentially within the roadway, within the road right of way. So they run directly alongside the road. When I'm talking about multi-use trails, I'm talking about the facilities that are off the roadway. So I'm talking about the portion of the Lake to Lake route that runs here in Markham, that runs kind of parallel to Leslie Street that goes north to south. And those multi-use trails are similar to multi-use paths in that they can be shared by pedestrians and cyclists, but they run in a dedicated right of way. So they are kind of off the road, sometimes running through parks, sometimes running through other facilities, sometimes running along highway corridors, those kinds of things. When we are talking about multi-use paths in these contexts, even I get caught up on it. When we're talking about multi-use trails, when we are talking about permitting or considering micromobility users on them, there is a specific type of multi-use trail that we are looking at based on Markham's active transportation plan. So these would be wider, they would be paved, and they would be designed to support that kind of mixed use rather than, like, let's say the kind of narrower crushed limestone trails that you might see. Next slide, please. So for our study, what we're really focusing on is we're focusing on all ages and abilities, or AAA facilities. And so these are the, this is the thing, I've got two laptops up here. So okay, there. How do I go back? I can't go back? Can't go back. All right, well, I guess I'm stuck winging it. So all age, it's okay, I know this stuff now. All age and abilities facilities, or AAA facilities, these are the types of active transportation and micromobility facilities that are considered comfortable and convenient for use by the majority of the population. So people who may not feel comfortable riding in mixed traffic, who may not feel comfortable riding beside high-speed traffic, or who may be out riding, like, let's say, with their parents or with their children, are not going to be wanting to ride directly adjacent to vehicles. And so all age and abilities active transportation and micromobility facilities in the context of our project are primarily going to be those multi-use trails, multi-use paths, and cycle tracks. Bike lanes, painted bike lanes on the road, can only be considered all age and abilities facilities in relatively limited contexts. We're talking low speed, low volume traffic. Otherwise, we are really looking at providing physical separation, keeping users away from cars to encourage people to use micromobility and active transportation more often. And so when we talk about all ages and abilities facilities or AAA facilities, that's what we are talking about. And so really what this all boils down to, if you go to the next slide here, is we would like to explore where micromobility devices should be operated. So at this point in time, our draft recommendations, and I will emphasize that these are in draft and we are looking for feedback, include permitting micromobility devices on nearly all facility types in Markham, which is consistent with the results of our review of micromobility policies across different municipalities, including those adjacent to Markham, such as Vaughan and Richmond Hill. The exception to this kind of consistency is when we are considering multi-use trails. And so in that realm, there can be some more conflicts over the use of e-scooters. However, in general, these conflicts don't appear to be a continued issue for micromobility systems, especially in some of the more mature micromobility systems, such as the City of Calgary or the City of Kelowna, where now that they have that kind of more mature, established system of shared micromobility, the number of conflicts between users on those types of multi-use corridors has really fallen off quite a bit. People have figured out how to share that space. So as a result, to create a more future-ready program for the City of Markham, we are recommending micromobility devices be permitted on off-road trails designated as multi-use. And that is a really important distinction, that we're not just saying like all trails. We want to make sure that we are defining which trails are permitted, being wide enough, having a good service condition, and really providing that type of space for all users to be able to share that space. So to implement the micromobility strategy, next slide, yeah, there we go. There is a recommendation for basically a phased plan to this. And it really consists of 3 key steps. First is to adopt a micromobility bylaw to permit private micromobility use on city infrastructure. To basically put this in context, currently, if you are riding a micromobility device on a bike lane in Vaughan, you are completely legal. As soon as you cross the border into the City of Markham, unless you are in the downtown Markham demonstration zone area, you are now illegal. Unless you are traveling in a bike lane that is a regional roadway, in which case you are still legal. So this is where the regulation sits at the moment. And so this is why the recommendation is to align those regulations with the City of Vaughan and Richmond Hill. Alongside that first step would come delivery of education and awareness campaigns to inform everyone on the changes to micromobility usage in the city. The second element of this, as you engage, would be to focus on expanding the all ages and abilities network, especially near transit hubs. So this would allow people to connect to more places in Markham and to use micromobility to really solve that first and last kilometer problem. And then finally, after micromobility policies and infrastructure have been implemented, then that's when the city can start to consider a more broad rollout of a shared micromobility service, similar to bike share or e-scooter share seen in other municipalities. And so with that, I believe, one of the core questions that we really want to dig into as we go through this project is, how should the city be prioritizing investment? Where should the city be focusing its efforts when it comes to micromobility? The recommended criteria to determine where that investment should be focused that we've got is proximity to transit, population density in terms of the number of residents per square kilometer, employment density, which looks at number of jobs per square kilometer, and then demographic information. So to determine where micromobility would serve people who have the highest degree of mobility need within the community. So these evaluation criteria are used to inform evidence-based decision making. We can't just kind of go around making decisions willy-nilly. We want to make sure that we are making decisions based on something that is grounded in evidence and fact. And so that's what the evaluation criteria are aiming to do. And those are parts of what we're looking for your feedback on today as well. And so with that, you've listened to me yammer on long enough about micromobility and active transportation. I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Alfred, who's going to talk briefly through the network alternatives, and then we will invite you to come and see us out in the lobby, where we'll be hovering around and answering questions.
Thank you, Justin. So today I will be going through some of the network alternatives, and I'm sure as everyone was coming into this room, we all saw that there were several maps as well. So after this, we do invite everyone to stick around and look at some of the maps more in detail. But I do want to give at least a brief overview of some of the work that we have done in terms of the network alternatives. So on the screen are projections from York Region for the 2022 official plan. We do recognize that Markham is growing. It's growing significantly, upwards of more than 80% growth in population. So growth of over 270,000 people, and as well as employment is expected to grow by about 70% too, by 120,000 jobs. So recognizing that there is a lot of growth occurring in Markham for the 2051 horizon, it is very important to assess different types of network alternatives to ensure that all future transportation within Markham can be satisfied and accommodate all the different amounts of growth that is expected. Here is just a bit more of a detailed look in terms of where some of this growth is projected. Again, these are based on the 2022 official plan forecasts that were also used to inform the York Region TMP. And as for where growth is projected, intensification is mostly focused in northern Markham, as well as several secondary plan areas, including Markville, Markham Center, and Yonge and Steeles. There are a lot more on the screen, but I'm not going to read them all out loud. We are also aware that there is planning for several transit-oriented communities, or sometimes we call them TOCs, that are underway. Some of these are not shown on the map, but the TMP study is coordinating with the city's official plan review as it progresses. So as there are a lot of changes occurring in Markham, we do want to make sure, again, that the future transportation network is ready. And one more note on this slide is that there are several potential provincial interventions that could happen to growth plans that can also add significantly more people in terms of both jobs as well as residents within Markham. Next slide, please. So now going more in terms of how we are developing the future network that will support all this growth in Markham. We first took an initial starting point for all the themes, and they are shown here. Our first alternative is called the base alternative, and it's intended to be our baseline comparison. So this includes all of the planned and approved City of Markham projects, as well as non-city projects that we do anticipate to be committed based on budgets and funding for the next 10 years. Our second alternative is what we call neighborhood. So it does focus more on neighborhood level improvements. So this includes items such as improved transit frequencies, more emphasis on shorter distance trips, micromobility, as well as road safety. And then our third alternative is what we're calling transit supportive, which focuses more on large dedicated right-of-way transit projects, such as the Viva services that you see on Highway 7. There will also be policies to focus on first-class kilometer access solutions, as well as travel demand management.
Doesn't every alternative build on one forward?
Yes, so there are overlapping elements of it, and we aren't able to capture everything within here, but we do encourage you to, after this presentation, to take a closer look. Again, there are a lot of details, and this is just intended to be a brief overview of everything within this formal presentation. So, as I mentioned, a lot of different line items that you will see on the maps, but I do want to go through just showcasing some of the themes and kinds of considerations that we are taking into account for each of the alternatives. You'll see a lot of sticky notes and a lot of pens available too, and anyone with a lanyard is part of the product team. So we do invite you to take a closer look at the maps outside and then provide the feedback after this presentation. So in terms of just a brief overview of everything, for road projects, the base generally includes all new roads and growth areas, and again, likely projects within the next 10 years based on the latest budgets. Within the neighborhood scenario, we are introducing what we're calling road rebalancing opportunities for collector roads to allocate space for potential connectivity purposes, and these can include roads such as Denison Street or Birchmount Road. And then lastly, the transit supported scenario for roads includes even more regional road widenings, several new highway crossings over Highway 404 and Highway 407, new grade separations to support rail services, and other interchange improvements. And before I go into the other modes, I do want to re-articulate that these are all just alternatives. This does not mean that this is definitively being carried over into a preferred, but it gives our team an opportunity to test out which elements are critical to support the future transportation network in Markham. For transit, the base includes committed projects, including the ongoing Young North subway extension and the Highway 7 East Viva. Other transit routes are assumed to run at lower frequencies, such as 15-minute headways. In the neighborhood scenario, more transit service is being assumed on several collector roads that currently do not have service. And then lastly, the transit-supported scenario for transit assumes the most change for transit, including the introduction of several new rapid transit projects that have been, some of them have been identified in the York Region TMP, in addition to other provincially recognized and other regionally recognized projects, such as the Ontario Line Extension North project, as well as the East-West Crossrail and the Alto High-Speed Rail that is planned to connect between Toronto and Quebec City. In addition, there will also be more frequent service on arterial roads as an assumption. And then lastly, for active transportation, the alternatives are built around providing AAA facilities that I just have mentioned, so all ages and ability facilities, which are facilities that are safe and comfortable for all users based on the context of the road. Again, the base alternative for active transportation includes everything identified in the 10-year priority cycling network in the city's completed active transportation master plan, whereas the neighborhood alternative then expands on this network to include AAA facilities on collector roads. And then lastly, the transit-supported alternative further expands on this and looks into expanding the AAA networks on all arterial roads as well. Next slide, please. And then here is just some of the evaluation metrics that we are going to be evaluating these different alternatives based on guiding principles. So I'm just going to read them out loud. So safety for all, sustainable multimodal mobility systems, inclusive community-centric design, effective and efficient use of resources, equitable access for all, and change through innovation. You'll also see some guiding principles that are sort of shaded more lightly, and these evaluation metrics will not be directly evaluated, but instead considered throughout the entire TMP study. So this includes collaboration for success, resilience and adaptability to change, as well as transparency and accountability. And then the last slide, I do just want to wrap up the presentation and thank everyone for attending. I know everyone is busy and it is the evening of a weekday. So as mentioned before, we do invite everyone to stay around to review the boards outside. And you'll also see that there are some boards where there is a little bit of an orange bubble, where there are opportunities for people to take dots and put them on mapping activities so that we can hear your thoughts. Please feel free to take some of the sticky notes and write any of your thoughts and paste them on the boards as well. And then anyone with a lanyard as part of the TMP team, again, we'd love to hear more about your thoughts on how we can shape the future of transportation within Markham. And then one last thing before I pass it off maybe, is that we do have an online site that you can scan through the QR code, and any additional feedback that you may not have the chance to talk to our team about today, we'd love to hear your thoughts online, and all this material is also available online as well.